Hi, my name's Sarah, and I've been diagnosed with a thymoma. I'm going to do a couple of videos which kind of break down how I was diagnosed, what it means, and what my next steps are. If you can hear any noises, it's because my baby is currently grunting and groaning across my belly. So backstory. Well, I'm quite lucky really because a thymoma is one of those tumours that is never really diagnosed very often. It's extremely rare, and it's generally found because it's asymptomatic. It's generally found later in life. So I'm 29, and generally they're found in 40, 50-year-olds when they've caused real damage. So my backstory is I had Arthur 10 weeks ago, and when he was 3 weeks old, I started to get really bad chest pains. Like it was like a stabbing sensation in my sides and in my back, and it started off in my right hand side, shoulder and back, and kind of moved its way around, and then I was short of breath. Like I was struggling to really open up my lungs. So I went to the doctors, booked in for the next day, got a really early appointment, and she was concerned, as she said, sent me straight to the hospital for blood tests and a CT scan because they thought it was postpartum blood clots. So really, I'm very grateful for my son anyway, but I'm extremely grateful because they took me seriously for my chest pains, because I had them a couple of weeks before he was born, and they put it down to a viral infection. So they took me seriously, so they sent me straight to the hospital. I got a CT scan of my lungs and a blood test, and they said it looked like there was infection around my lungs, and they were concerned about, like I say, blood clots, so they put me straight onto blood thinners. So that was the first step. So I went home. Sorry, I've got an itchy nose, I'm going to have to itch it. So I went home, and it got worse. So I went back the next day because I had to go back for a daily injection of these blood thinners. I went back the next day and told them, I was like, is it meant to be getting worse? They said no, so they sent me for another emergency CT scan, but this time not of the lungs, of the entire chest cavity. And then they said, oh, there's a lesion, and the lesion is pressing on, is doing something to your lungs and to your heart as well. There's an issue with your heart. It's like, right, okay. Mainly the pericardium. It's like, right, okay. So they admitted me into hospital because they wanted to monitor me, and they sent me for another CT scan, an echo, an MRI. I had so many different tests. And then the next day they came and said to me, it's a tumour. And I was by myself in hospital, and I burst into tears and rung my husband and rung my parents, and they literally all rushed down because I'm 29 years old and I'm getting diagnosed with a tumour in my chest. So that was like 6-7 weeks ago. So that was the initial step, and unfortunately, they wanted to be able to do a biopsy straight away, but because I'd had the blood thinners, they couldn't do it for however many hours. So I was booked in. So that was like the Friday. I was kept in hospital, but I was like on day release because it was bank holiday weekend. So I was kept in hospital, put on day release, and I could come home until the Tuesday, but in and out and keeping monitored because I was still short of breath and I was still having heart issues. So on the Tuesday I went in, I was given local anaesthetic and I had a CT-led needle biopsy done, which was the strangest experience I've ever had, I think. Excuse me, sorry. Because he would put the needle in at like a millimetre, send me back into the CT machine, bring me out, put the needle in another millimetre, send me back into the CT machine. And it kept going like this over and over again until he was happy that he was in the right position. Then he took 4 samples of my tumour, and then obviously I was fine to go home. With regard to a scar, I've got like a little tiniest, it just looks like a spot, to be honest, a little bump. Nothing, and I think that'll fade to nothing anyway. So yeah, now interestingly, when I was recovering in hospital, a couple of hours later, were just about to get discharged, and I bent down, and at the back of my trolley I went, oh, what are those packages with my name on? And the nurse went, ooh, and she realised that they'd left my samples on the back of my trolley. Great. So she rushed them down to the pathology lab, and guess what? They came back as inconclusive. Now, whether that's them or whether that was just the fact that the sample was too small and they're covering themselves, who knows? But either way, my sample came back as inconclusive. Now, at this stage, obviously, the doctors are throwing around all these different cancer names. They said it could have been lymphoma, thymoma, teratoma, and for it to come back as inconclusive after 2 weeks of waiting, because that's how long it took, I was just so frustrated. So then I got referred through to a heart and chest hospital, and I met my lovely surgeon who kind of put me at ease. I know it sounds awful, but I was glad to be kind of out of the A&E section, the main hospital. I'm glad to be out of the main hospital because I think they've just got so many different things, whereas I was at a specialised hospital now. So the plan was to get another biopsy, but this time it'd have to be a bigger biopsy, and it was to be an open chest, like a small incision. Well, I say small, it's big enough incision to get a good chunk of the tumour. Are you quite dumb? Yeah, so to get a big chunk of the tumour. So I went to this heart and chest hospital. I met this lovely, lovely surgeon who kind of went back over all the diagnoses, and he was very much under the impression that it was cancer. And I said, it could even be benign. And he said, well, possibly it could even be benign. So that's the kind of mentality we're in. So for a good, I don't know, first 6 weeks of my child's life, I was considered to be having cancer. Great. Now, so I went for the biopsy again. They did it under general anaesthetic. As soon as he stops wriggling, I'll be able to show you my scar. But it's about 10 centimetres, and they went in within my, like, through my rib cage, like in one of the gaps. So they were able to get a good section of it, and they sent it off. Now, this took 3 weeks. It was meant to take 2 weeks, but for some reason it took 3 weeks. I don't know whether they sent it off with further testing to double check. So we went to hospital on Wednesday of this week, and we weren't expecting our results because we went back to our original hospital, and as far as I was aware, it was an outpatient checkup to make sure that my lung function hadn't changed, to make sure that my chest cavity hadn't changed or anything like that. So anyway, we got called straight in, and she just went, it's a thymoma and it is benign. I was just like, amazing, great. And that's all she would tell us. She said she doesn't know anymore, that my surgeon would call me in for Friday and we'd discuss it further. And I kept saying, so it's not cancer. And she kept going, no, it's not cancer. It's definitely not cancer. Great, amazing. Was on a high. Rang all my relatives that have been with me. Put it on Facebook about my journey. So yeah, it was on a major high. Now, before I skip through that, the surgery to get the biopsy, I was meant to stay in hospital for like 3-4 days. That's how much he wanted me to stay in hospital. I stayed in for 2 because I wanted to be home with my son, newborn and everything. I would really recommend staying in for as long as they can, because that first day home, proper day home after the morphine had worn off, I was in so much pain. The day after was fine, but that first day I just couldn't cope. I was crying. I was just in so much pain. And I've gone through childbirth on nothing but gas and air, so I've got quite a high pain threshold. So yeah, so if they say stay in hospital, I'd say stay in hospital, and when I have this next surgery I'm going to stay in hospital as well. So yeah, so that's what we had. Then on the Friday we went to the hospital. We're on a high because obviously we'd been told it was benign and everything, so we were on a very much a high. Just thought, oh, we're going to figure out what's going on next. Now when we met the surgeon this time, it was still very positive, but there was also a little bit of negativity there as well. And we came out of that meeting feeling like, was that a positive meeting? So that's been my journey so far. And that's the end of this video, and then in my next video I will tell you what is the next steps, what he's told us about my diagnosis, and how it's changed. Okay, thanks for watching, bye.